Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is Armin Navabi. Armin, how are you? How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm great. How are you?
I'm really great too. It's really good. It's good. The election's over. I've been sleeping better. I'm feeling better. I've been especially sleeping better, like God during the Holocaust.
Okay, Ali, are you serious? Okay, you know what? I'm not doing good anymore. I was in such a great mood, and then Ali just dropped right at the beginning. We didn't even pass the 30 seconds. Actually, he dropped it he dropped the big H right exactly at the time that YouTube is the most sensitive about the first 30 seconds. So yeah, okay, great.
I didn't even catch that one.
Yes. I know it's just it was for the joke. I totally forgot. But anyway, we're now to obviously something a little bit more serious. So on this episode, we have a guest that Susanna referred to us, and I heard about her story, and I was just really compelled, and I thought I just had to. Well, both of us, Armin and I, just had to have you on, Deborah. So Deborah's with us today. Deborah was born into a Mennonite family, and she grew up in Canada. She went to Bible college after high school, which ultimately led her to leave Christianity and become an atheist, as Bible college often does. But later on, she was recruited into the Islamic fundamentalist organization, Hizb-ut Tahrir. Hizb-ut Tahrir, I think many of you might know, is what the organization that Majid Nawaz used to recruit for as well, because before he came out and became who he is today. So Hizb-ut Tahrir is an organization that aims to reestablish the Islamic Caliphate. She was married. Her husband was a member, and at one point, Deborah, I guess you'll tell us more about this. You were fully practicing hijab-wearing, abaya-wearing Muslim. But today, the way that you're seeing her, you can tell that things have changed. So, Deborah, first of all, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here. And thank you for coming here.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, so some people, by the way, some people already know Deborah, and the people who already know Deborah in the live chat, they know how awesome she is. So we have a lot of people who are very excited that Deborah is here.
I'm in the Atheist Republic family.
Yeah, that's great. So, Deborah, just tell us like a quick overview of the first part of your life. So you were born in a Christian family, and you grew up. How did that transition? How did you end up with Hizb-ut Tahrir?
Oh, well, I was born to a Mennonite family. My parents grew up in Mexico in villages, so they did like the whole no electricity and very segregated. But they met and got married here in Canada, and we just they lived in the city. They didn't want to raise their kids that way. So we were just religious, by going to church and visiting relatives, and we would go spend time in Mexico in the summers with the villages there. So we were exposed to it a lot. So I guess a lot of that fundamentalism was kind of ingrained in me. I was against feminism as a young girl. I saw that, that doesn't work with Mennonite ways. The woman should, be the wife and have the kids and be at home. My mom stayed home with us until we were all in older, and then she got just part-time jobs. So she was always home, always, raising us. So I was the only girl in my family. So I saw that as my role, basically. So I always went to church. I was always the most religious in my family. So I actually found any local churches and joined like youth groups, and all my friends were like the churchgoers. So I was always quite fundamental that way. And after high school, I decided to go to Bible college for a year. Well, I didn't mean to go for a year, but it ended up only being a year. And because that's now when I really saw how the Bible was compiled, when I took an Old Testament class. And man, it was like this sinking feeling in my stomach. I remember it. It was just like I was so disappointed. Like it was just really like that's all that happened there. They just found a bunch of texts and decided which ones they want to just piece together. Like it wasn't, I don't know, it just seemed like it should have been like a very divine, magical process. But there was just so much that had been left out. And then all the things that you lose in translation, because I was learning a lot of Hebrew at the time. And I was just like, this is like not what I was believing in. So I, descended into like an atheist type of life after that. And I met an atheist guy and we got married, and we were married for a few years. And it just didn't work out. We didn't have kids or anything. And that's when I was like more spiritual and kind of searching around for things. Like I was just looking, and I had met my ex during this time. And he was like this Hizb-ut Tahrir activist. Like he was doing, like they were participating in debates and lectures in the universities. And so it was very interesting because like this was now during when Bush was being reelected and the Iraq war was, happening. And I was, very liberal minded at the time. So I was like against all that. And like the whole 9/11 conspiracy thing was going around. So I was more starting to be like, oh, like there's like a whole nother side to the other half of the world that I didn't know. And I knew nothing about Islam. And so him coming forward and saying that Islam is an ideology, it's like a whole way of life, it's not just this religion. It started just making sense with like, the issues I had with Christianity, how they kind of solve those problems. Like in my head, it made a lot of sense. And so I just kind of decided to dive in, and we got married. And I converted to Islam like during that exact same time. So we just full on, like I basically left my town and didn't tell anybody, and we just like basically.
Was it when you converted to Islam? Was it Islam and Hizb-ut Tahrir that was the primary driver for you, or was your relationship with this guy?
Well, I mean, I obviously I was like interested in him, and I thought he was just a lot more intelligent than the other guys that had been dating at the time and stuff. And the activism and just this whole, like, I was learning the history of the other side of the world now, and things were starting to make sense from that point of view. And so it was like everything about it. Like, so I was like researching Islam on my own a bit, and it's just all seemed so intriguing to me. And basically having like everything dictated to you. And I found comfort in like knowing like this is what the creator tells you what to do, and you don't have to like make it up for yourself. And so you just kind of know what you're doing is right. So how to dress, how to eat, how to everything, right? So I just like fell into that. And with the Hizb, it was like I joined the group almost exactly at the same time, because now I was in this group, like all my friends were from them. We were just doing all the activities like right from the start. So I was learning how to pray while attending halakas with all the Hizb sisters. And I was like feeling like, wow, so I'm learning the right Islam like right away. So like I felt like, fortunate, like I'm learning it better than all the other Muslims around, kind of thing.
Right. Can you actually tell us a little bit about the difference because of Hizb-ut Tahrir, or the Hizb, as you say it, with other average mainstream Muslims, or at least mainstream Muslims around where you were?
Yeah, I guess just that the Hizb just practices it like not a religion. It's like a full way of life. Like you conduct everything. So we would be calling out other Muslims all the time for anything, like for participating in the government or any of the, I don't know, like if they're just not dressing right, like, you know, just going around to different lectures and trying to correct them. Like if there was any conferences, we would go to them and they stand up and debate the lecturers every time. We would go to like different, I don't know, like these Pakistani events sometimes. And they were like, they invited the mayor to come to these, and we would like be like, you know, this is wrong. And we would like stand up and try to correct everybody because like we're not supposed to be participating
in government. You're not supposed to be participating.
Right. Or supporting it or anything.
Yeah.
Or supporting
it. Because
you go on, sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, I'll actually add on to that. I think the one distinction about Hizb-ut Tahrir, the way that they have avoided being banned like other sort of fundamentalist Islamist groups, is that they don't take the violent approach, right? So they tend to do political activities, proselytization,
right?
But they still want to establish Sharia law in Western countries, and they still want to establish a global Islamic Caliphate.
Yeah,
but they do it more by
the appeal to me as well, because it was like we're bringing about the Islamic State, but in a non-violent way. So it was like, you know, we're not a threat. We're just bringing ideas and correcting people, and basically, like we give lectures that would say, like, you know, you're only practicing a third of Islam because there's no state for us to implement the rest. So basically, we're all sinful until we can live in the state and implement all of Islam, or at least if we're not working towards it, we're being sinful. So
but the Islam that they would implement, if that state was theoretically achieved, right, that they would implement would have those violent elements.
100%.
As in, they do believe in it, right?
Yeah, you have to have that, but you can't implement that part of the state until there is a state. So yeah, like jihad's a whole big thing, but it's just not
very Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
No, well, okay. Actually, that's a very good comment.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So the difference between, so if we have like ISIS and then Hizb-ut Tahrir and then Muslim Brotherhood, the difference is that, so the similarities between ISIS and Hizb-ut Tahrir is that they both want to bring the Islamic State. The similarities between Hizb-ut Tahrir and Muslim Brotherhood is that they both are non-violent until, you know, they're in power or something like that. But the difference between Muslim Brotherhood and Hizb-ut Tahrir is that Muslim Brotherhood is very much participating in governance right now, and Hizb-ut Tahrir doesn't want to participate in governance right now. Like, they're against the democratic process. The Muslim Brotherhood's entire agenda is to get them to come into power using the democratic process. Right. Do you agree that that's the difference between them?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They use the system to like kind of infiltrate it, like so saturate it. But the Hizb would say that's wrong and it won't ever work because that's not the way the Prophet did it. And the Prophet
and they're right.
Work. Exactly. I mean, they are like, the state will only happen when we do exactly what the Prophet does. So like they have their own seerah, and it's called the Islamic State, and it's like the seerah, but in that whole context, on his exact method on how he spread the ideas, get people together, the way they conduct their halakas, and the way they educate people, and the way they teach you how to think, and everything is based off his life and all the hadiths on how he implemented the Islamic State, like letter to letter. Like they are very adamant about that.
I would very much like to see a debate between a Muslim Brotherhood person and a Hizb-ut Tahrir person, because I do not understand how could the Muslim Brotherhood person win, because the first thing that the Hizb-ut Tahrir person could say is that, listen, the election process, parliaments, presidents, these are European, these are ideas that came out of Western Europe during the Enlightenment era. How on earth could you even pretend that this is anything Islamic? And I do not know how you would defend that. Like Hizb-ut Tahrir person will win that argument outright. So I don't know. Yeah. But here's a danger. Like, I don't know, Deborah, if you know this, but if let me know if you think this is true, because before ISIS, if non-Muslims who were familiar with the idea of an Islamic State knew of and the idea of Islamic State because of Hizb-ut Tahrir. Like, I know a lot more people figured out, like, oh, this Islamic State is a thing, this global caliphate is something that some Muslims want to bring back because of ISIS. But before that, if any non-Muslims have heard about that, and that goal was because of Hizb-ut Tahrir, they popularized it among non-Muslims before ISIS.
The word that they're constantly saying is caliphate, khilafah, Islamic State, everything.
Do you think the Hizb-ut Tahrir red pilled a whole bunch of people into the ISIS?
I wonder.
It was like a, what's it called? What was it? A gateway drug for like some people to go
in the UK, they call the Hizb a conveyor belt to terror people. So basically, the way it works, it's a gateway. Like some people suggest, I don't know how accurate this is that you're just an average Muslim minding your business, not doing like anything Islamic, or just doing the minimal, and then Hizb-ut Tahrir introduces you to the idea of that we need to bring on the Islamic State back. And then through peaceful means, and then you get so excited, yes, Islamic State, we need to bring it back. And then at some point you might be like, I don't think we could achieve that. Like, it doesn't seem like it's possible using the Hizb-ut Tahrir method. And then you look into other groups that might be interested in bringing it. Also, the way they culture you once you're in, it's very methodical. Like, it's so cult-like. Like the way they teach you, like, so they like, if they have these fired up youth that like could go that way, they have a way of like just like no, and then like they culture you till you're like thinking exactly like them. Like, I'm telling you, they all have their way they speak. That's why, like, when we're watching stuff with Majid, it's like, I can, like, you still see that way in him. It was like really insane.
You really? Okay, so Majid, you still see some Hizb-ut Tahrir in the way Majid speaks.
Yeah.
Majid,
like, it's just in you.
Explain, elaborate.
Just the way, like, they not like lay things out and explain things in like a systematic way, and how like they manipulate the things into saying no, it's just a discussion and we're not having an argument. And that's what I was saying. We were doing like, oh my god, it's sounding like.
I may have missed it, but did we mention that Nawaz was involved in recruiting your husband to Hizb-ut Tahrir, right?
Oh yeah.
This is back at the time when Majid was a member.
So while he was a member in the UK, he was actually Mazen's teacher. My ex's teacher, and he was his like mas'ul, they call them. So they culture them. So you do your full like teachings with him, and he became a member under him. And he up until he was imprisoned in Egypt, and then I guess. So
basically, your life got screwed because of Majid Nawaz.
No, he probably would have come across them too, but.
So Majid Nawaz basically recruited your husband into Hizb-ut Tahrir, and you got recruited into Hizb-ut Tahrir because of your husband. Yeah. So technically, you became radicalized because of Majid Nawaz. Yeah. Okay.
Although I never became a full member. I was just I didn't want to become a full member because there's so much responsibility on you. But I was like being taught under them and everything the whole time.
So Deborah, when you were in, so you talked about some of your sort of beliefs at the time. you were talking about conspiracy theories about 9/11 and all this stuff. So once you got into Hizb-ut Tahrir, I mean, they do believe, as in like the ideals that they have. Like once they do achieve this Islamic state, they do have opinions about what should happen to apostates. How women should be treated.
100%.
Are those things that you believe? So describe a little bit. You wore the hijab, you wore the burqa, you did the whole thing.
Yeah.
And did you also believe these things? How did you rationalize these things because I mean, it sounds like there's a grooming process. I mean, this, when you're talking about culturing them, it sounds like it's grooming and priming the mindset. So
yeah, it's really teaching you how to think and how to react to everything, like in an Islamic way. So when you're watching anything on TV, or if you are out in public, like how to process it as a Muslim and how to look at it, and everything is based off of your afterlife and how this is affecting your Islam and how to behave in Islamic personality. So he would sit me down, and the way they lecture you, I always say he always lectures you is just sitting you down and explaining something to you over and over for as long as it takes until he sees that you can repeat it back and be fully understanding. So I was 100% convinced of the Quran, that it was 100% God's words. So everything that the Hizb teaches about Islam being an ideology and everything was following the Prophet's methods, I was 100% convinced by it. And I felt extremely fortunate to be guided to that. I was guided and I converted or reverted and got to get married and not make any mistakes with my Islam. So I was I had this I felt honored. So I was fully convinced by it. And so as I was learning more and more about Islam, the longer you're in it, you're already fully convinced. So when I heard about the apostasy, that was several months later, but it was well, whatever, I'm not going to leave, obviously. So it wasn't even, it didn't even.
But do you think it's justified for people to be killed?
I didn't because I think there had been a case in Iran that was in the news, and that's when we were talking about it, the Hizb talk about it as well, and saying, yeah, it is a legit law and it will be implemented. But it's merciful, because if you leave Islam, you don't just go kill them. You go and you bring them back and you try to convince them, and there's a process. And you don't kill them until they fully reject or whatever. So it was this it's merciful, so we would probably convince them back.
I was told that the stoning of gay people was also merciful in Islam, because if you die, because you paid the price and now you don't have to burn for it.
Right. So the punishments, the Sharia punishments, are considered a punishment here that you will spare you from in the afterlife or in the grave.
But not that apostasy one, because if you're not a Muslim, you're going to go to hell anyways.
Right.
Unless you, yes. But is that what?
That's not fair. All of the other punishments can get you there. You can atone on earth, and you don't have to go.
I don't know if all of them. I think it's just partial. It's it's not. It does carry over to the afterlife.
The stoning of the gay person is for the sake of the gay person, apparently, because now you don't burn in hell. But the killing of the apostate is for the sake of the ummah, because
to protect.
You're protecting the Islamic community for the spreading of the corruption, and also the suggestion that this is even a possibility. Yep. So it's not for your sake; that's for the sake of the other Muslims.
Yep.
Wow. How does it so? Yeah, let's move on. So how does it now? You're married. You have several kids with your the Hizb-ut Tahrir husband, and how does it start unraveling? Is it that things start not making sense, or is it that something happens with the marriage? What happens
Well,
where?
I mean, so we were quite segregated initially, like as I was, when I first converted and got married, and we were like isolated in different cities and stuff. But as I was having more kids, we moved closer to my family. And then after a time, he married a second wife too. And so
In Canada?
Yeah. And it's very common, actually. We found out after it happened that there's like lots. So, and anyway, yeah. So during that time, it's very hard to be segregated in among society. And as our kids were getting older, and I have an autistic child, so I had to start bringing him to therapy. We were homeschooling all the kids, but he had to be brought like to therapy. So I would have to go out and now be among society. So the difficulties of that, and being like as practicing and having to keep like the second family from everybody, like, and have that second life and kind of like have lie to people about stuff, that just started really wearing on me. And it wasn't me like not liking Islam. It was more me just, it was wearing on me to a point where I didn't know what to do anymore. Like I felt like I had to get out, and I didn't know, like, I just had to get out, and I couldn't even explain why. And it was like watching my kids grow up and now having to force them to do this thing that I had chosen. And I always thought that I would, the kids would have the freedom to choose as well, like, because there was the no compulsion. I thought that our kids would get that chance as well. But as they were getting older, I was realizing, no, like, it's being enforced on everybody's kids. Like, you just, that whole, like, beat them until they're 7 to pray, like, and then those stupid verses about, like, you're literally forcing your kids to practice.
I think that the point that you brought up about forcing your kids to go through something that you had chosen, that's so important, because when they talk about the no compulsion thing, they say, well, you're free to choose. And a lot of people are like, I'm choosing Islam. But then what they do is that, when they have kids, you force it on them and you indoctrinate them. That's not a choice.
No.
That's not a choice. It's so I think what you mentioned there is actually pretty profound in that sense. Like, when we talk about whether religion can be a choice and whether indoctrination is a choice or not. So I'm actually really glad that you had that insight.
That was what actually the straw that broke the camel's back, that made me like, I had been wanting to go for a long time, but I understood how hard it would be, because I was so, like, I had kept so many secrets from my own family. Like, I didn't even know where I would go. But it was just when my kids would actually, like, I saw that in them, that they didn't want that anymore. It was like this weird, like, because my ex would go back and forth between the two houses, and when he was coming to my house, like, the kids were just like scared, like they didn't want him coming anymore. And that's when I started seeing, like, okay, I got to get out now. And I honestly, like, over these past few years, as I've gotten out of it, I'm only starting to really understand, like, what it was, because I just, like, Islam wasn't even the thing I was running from. I was just running from the situation. And then after a time, like, I had taken my hijab off at that time too. I couldn't, like, I was so messed up. Like, going out into public was terrifying me. I was terrified of everybody. Like, I thought, like, I was so scared of just being in public.
Why?
Muslim. Just that, like, there's like right-wing people that were gonna try to attack me. It was this crazy, like, anxiety. Like, I couldn't function, or it was just, I was being really irrational with.
Did you face any discrimination from
maybe
any?
Like, a little bit, like, just people making comments or, like, looking at me. It was like there was, like, a lot of tea acts going on, and so people were starting to, like, look at Muslims, like that. But for me, it was just like, the anxiety of everything was just getting me to a point, and I took my hijab off, and that like was such a relief because I just like blended in now to society. And so that ease helped me to
so as much as you think that anxiety was exaggerated, like, so there is some discrimination, but not to the point that would warrant the amount of anxiety that you felt, right?
Right.
However, does this suggest that a lot of Muslims other Muslims are experiencing I mean, even if you think it's unjustified, it's still pretty sad that they're experiencing that much anxiety. Like, is that something that other Muslims think you're like in Canada or United States are experiencing on a daily basis? That
I think
level
so.
of like,
I think every time any news comes out, like what's been happening, I think like hijabi women would be a lot more afraid to go out in public. There's been like it affected me.
That is sad. What would you suggest for people to non-Muslims to do? Like, is there any but given that you had the experience of being a hijabi
Good question.
woman, what would you?
I don't know. There's like I don't even know. It's just more people just look at you, and I think just the added paranoia. I don't know.
You know, the one suggestion would be to be friendly or smile at somebody, but that's also like haram. Anyways, I don't know.
You
Like,
can't do that with the hijabi.
We can't do that with the hijabi.
Sometimes you can.
Yeah, but just like being nicer,
being kind, being nice. Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Can I run to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
sure.
yeah. Of course.
I think it's
That's
weird.
okay. That's okay. No worries.
It's all good.
I do want to ask. Wait. Okay, so I do want to ask that's very interesting that the thing that got her, like the motherly. So my understanding is this. Your understanding? It was the motherly love that basically got her. Like saw that this is toxic to her children. That managed to.
Yeah, this is reminding me of, remember when we had Tanya Joya on?
Yeah.
She was the ex-wife of the ISIS leader in Syria. So she had, and she talked about something similar, that when her kids were growing up, right, and she saw that what they would have to go through, because kids grow up, you want the best for your kids, you want them to be able to make their own choices and so on, and then when you realize that that's not happening, and you made your choice. I think Tanya, we were talking about another guest we had, Tanya Joya. She was the ex-wife of an ISIS leader. I think that's how we're saying it. But she had a similar kind of thing. I think she had 5 kids with him, and as the kids grew up, there were certain incidents that happened with the kids where she thought, okay, now this is becoming too much. It seems like that really makes a difference once your kids do start growing up. Yeah,
like when especially you convert and you're consciously choosing this difficult way of life. It's difficult. Like fasting's hard. Like everything's hard, and to enforce it on a child, and how they make little toddlers memorize Quran and stuff. It's just so crazy.
Yeah. How did you mentioned many times moving closer to your family, and then you're keeping secrets from your family. How did your family respond to all of this? I mean, I think that you had the conversion to Islam, then you go into Hizb-ut Tahrir, and then it just feels like it's just getting worse and worse, and then you're covering yourself up, you're sort of deeply involved in this cult, and then you have kids, and the kids are going through it. So, and then he takes a second wife. Like, how did all of this sort of play out with the family? Did they try to intervene? Did they try to reach out to you?
They always tried to reach out. They were always nice, and they disapproved of a lot of it, obviously. But I mean, they loved the kids, and I tried to keep the kids in their life a lot, so that was good. I tried to keep close connection, although it was very hard to keep the second wife from him. And then as the kids got older, they had to learn how to lie to my parents, saying they don't like it. So we're teaching now the children how to lie. And that was really, hard on a kid because like they're their grandparents, and you know, this is like something that they're part of, you know.
Yeah.
So teaching them like, you know, it's wrong here in this country, but Islamically it's right. So it's just like so confusing for them.
And that's another question I had was that, you know, Majid Nawaz, obviously so he was your ex-husband's mentor, right?
Yep.
And then he comes out of jail and he is now a reformer and he starts thinking differently. So, you know, were you watching this and did that have any kind of influence in you? Like, okay, here's a guy, like, you know, I know that he was a guy who helped your husband get into it, but were you following his trajectory as well in terms of, okay, so there is a guy who was in my situation and now he's not, and that's a possibility, something like that?
Right. So the way my ex talked about it, and it was funny because he was like, you know, I really revered Majid and I want to know what he thinks because it might be something that I might believe as well. Like he was actually going into it with like that type of mindset even.
Wow.
So as he discussed with him, it was more just like trying to get him back to the Hizb, if anything. And as he realized that that wasn't happening, and then as he was starting the Quilliam Foundation and everything, it like he was just like talking about how much of a deviant and an enemy to Islam he is now, because moderating Islam is like one of the worst things you can do. So yeah, it just became like a negative.
So how did you actually manage to get out though? Like, isn't the control very tight, especially over
like who, Majid?
No, from your husband. Like, is it like, how did you manage to like, did you just pack up and leave?
No.
Like, was it as simple as that?
So I told him I wanted to leave, and it was like, but I didn't know how to say it. So I was like, just like leave me alone for a while and just stay at the other house and let the kids so they don't even notice. That was what I intended initially. And when I started expressing that, he of course doubled down and was trying to like enforce everything on me. And as I was like resisting, I was like telling him like, I know nothing's going to change. Like, so how can I, there's nothing's going to change. And it was just escalating anyway, because he had just been traveling to a bunch of countries and they were looking for a place for us all to move to. So it was just going to get worse. And I knew it was headed that way. And so his other wife got pregnant again. And then he took me aside and told me that I can't leave the house anymore without his permission. Like I was going to now be locked down. And so I was just like shocked with that. So I thought of an excuse that I could go to my parents with the kids for the weekend. And I did that with the intention of not coming back. So I did tell him like on the Sunday night before going back, or before having to go back, I told him I'm not coming back. And then it became crazy where he was like threatening to get the kids. And he did take my son out of therapy like before it took him back like away from me. And then we ended up having to go to a shelter for a month to get away from him because he was just not letting it happen. So
is there any legal action that you could take? I mean, you were in Canada, right? So this is another.
Yeah, he got like harassment and like stalking charges, and then I got a restraining order for 3 years, which was what I needed. But I mean, it didn't protect, like, I mean, I got the restraining order, but the kids didn't. So,
Okay.
That's. Armin, go ahead.
So, okay, so after you left all of that, you're still a Muslim though when you left.
Yeah.
Like, and you were okay. So how did you left your husband? You left Hizb-ut Tahrir. You're still a Muslim.
Yeah.
What happened then?
I didn't know what to do. I didn't leave Islam. That wasn't even a thing I was thinking. But I did take my hijab off, and I just started like just living. I didn't practice at all. So I was just in my mind, I'm like, I'm just not practicing right now. And the lawyers and everybody would ask me, like, are you Muslim still? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I didn't know what to think until like my ex accused me in the court papers saying I had publicly denounced Islam. Like, he literally put that in there. And I was like, what? Like, I never did that. And then so it just kind of like led me to be like, well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess now I'll publicly denounce Islam then. So that's when
Okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so then I really started like just decided to just shed it all and really think about the religion, and it just led me on the path to
okay, but why would that be in the court document? Like,
I don't know. He you should see, he writes novels, statements.
Okay, was it like, what is he thinking? Like, the judge is going to be
I know, right?
Oh my God, I wasn't on your side until you told me that she left denounced. I mean, you're in Canada. Like, what?
Yeah, but he's that delusional. Like, to him, that's like an important thing to state in the
Canadian court.
Yeah. And then I was just like, and I told my lawyer, I'm like, do you know like what he believes about that? Like, he actually believes like about apostasy and all that stuff. Like, why would he put that in there?
So wait, did you say renounce or denounce?
Denounce.
Denounce. So you insulted Islam in a way. This is reminding me again of Yasmin Mohammed's story. I mean, Yasmin was actually abused by her parents, and she sought legal action, and the judge sent her back home because it's their culture.
That's so
right.
Crazy.
So if
maybe it was like that kind of thing, like he was.
Yeah, if it is, I mean, that's a very, very problematic thing. These kinds. I mean, I just think that did you tell the courts that he had taken a second wife? And
yeah, I told everyone right from the start, like nobody can do anything because he wasn't legally married to two people. So
he's not legally married, but I mean, just when you have all of those things and you have kids who are being raised in that environment, it's just, I mean, this is probably an entire topic for another episode where, how the legal system, they would never allow that to happen for a white family. A Canadian family. It's just,
that's what I'm saying. Even the Mormons get like in trouble, don't they? Like here in Canada.
Wait, she is a half-white family.
Sorry?
What do you mean by? You mean like Canadian family?
No, a
family?
Canadian.
Like Deborah is Canadian and she was white.
No,
yeah, she was.
But
I'm talking about the ex-husband and the kids, right? Like, if you have a Canadian white family versus a Canadian Muslim family, right, or Muslim non-white family, then you have. If it's like somebody who's been born and raised here and you have this kind of stuff happening in the household, like Child Protective Services would be like, this is an abusive environment. This is terrible. There's some cultish behavior going on. We need to take they may not take child custody away, but there's going to be something.
I know. I mean, I had
it's like the bigotry of low expectations here.
Child Protective Services had been involved right from when I was in a shelter, and they knew all this, and it's like nobody could do anything. And he literally, I think he took them to court. I think my ex even tried to take the Child Protective Services to court, and they started backing off because of it.
This is a real problem. I'll give you an example that's it's related, but it's a little different. I have these friends, and they have a son who's about like 10 years old or something, and he goes to school, and he's half Arab, right? So he's half Arab, like half white, and he's got the very sort of white complexion. He's not very, very brown, and he was going to school, and there were a lot of kids of sort of Syrian immigrants, the Syrian refugees who've come to Canada. And they were bullying him because he wasn't really a full Arab. They're like, why don't you know Arabic? Why do you speak Arabic with an accent? Why are you so light-skinned, even though you're an Arab? They reported it. The parents reported it many times, but they couldn't do anything. The kids of Syrian refugees, they wouldn't do anything.
Wow.
Right? And they had to move to a different school. This is something, it just happened like a few months ago.
That's so crazy.
I know there's something seriously wrong with the system over here, and people like you are suffering for it, and your kids are suffering for it.
Yeah.
Well,
Ali, we need to go to Patreon questions. If we have extra time, we could then ask more questions, but I don't want to rush it.
Yeah,
so
Susanna just asked about the triple talaq. So he talaqed me over text after I left.
Wait.
So
okay, so let's read Susanna's question. Susanna saying has her ex-husband.
Oh, sorry. You want me to read it?
Go on.
As her ex-husband triple talaqed her. So talaq means divorce. And the way that you divorce in Islam is you can just, well, at least in Sunni Islam, you can just say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. You triple talaq, and that means you're divorced. The guy can do that, and it's done. So she's saying, has your ex-husband triple talaqed you, or are you still technically married to him under Islamic law?
I don't know. I think we probably are technically still married because he divorced me over text, but he didn't even say talaq 3 times. He just said, fine, I'll divorce you. And that was it.
Wait, so he doesn't even know how to divorce you?
Well, that's what I'm saying. His superiors in the Hizb probably would disapprove and be like, you need to properly do this.
Yeah, he doesn't even know the Islamic way. Everybody knows the triple.
Oh, he knows, but I guess
something right,
didn't care.
Okay, so let's go through the questions from the top.
Katie is asking, she's saying, why is Deb such a sweet person? And as a Muslim, did she believe that certain groups of people should be killed? So I think we covered that as well.
Yeah.
But
I didn't like the idea of it, but I had to believe it, right?
Yeah. So how did you, but just a sweet person, she's saying, why are you such and I agree with her, you're a very sweet person, but how do you have having been through all this, how did you kind of regain your sanity? How did you?
That's still a process, actually. Don't think I have regained it all. There's still a lot of spite and rage in there, but I'm trying to harness it and direct it in a proper manner.
Well, I think that's probably one of the things. I mean, to me, it seems you're very articulate, and I like the way you're telling stories. Well, Stana saying for Deborah, what do you think of Islam versus Islamism? And people trying to create a distinction between Islam and political Islam.
So as an ex-Hizbi, as Munira, what I used to be called, I would say there is no difference. But now I do see that there is, I don't know. I'm still caught between, can we say there is just a religious Islam and this ideological? I don't know. It's as soon as you start digging deep into Islam, you end up with political Islam or the ideology, because it's just, they just follow the pure text. So it's all there.
So I think
create anything out of it, separate.
The way you could separate it is when it comes to the Islam itself, there is no difference between Islam and political Islam, because if you read Islam, hadith of the Quran, you can see that, and Muhammad's way, you can see that it's completely political. But I think you could separate Muslims, political Muslims and non-political Muslims. But again, so I think that separation should be between Muslims, not Islam itself. That's what I think. Right.
Because all the sweet Muslims that I know and knew before, they were just the loveliest people. They are the loveliest people, and they just pray at home and do their thing and fast in Ramadan. And no, they're not trying to enforce anything. They just love it, and it's just, they're charitable. But when we would take these lovely, nice Muslims as Hizbis and be like, look, this is the religion, they would fall into it. They'd be they agree, and they, as soon as we meet Muslims that decided to, I'm going to really learn the religion, they ended up coming to the Hizb and being like, yeah, you guys are the right ones. So I saw that process with just the religious Muslims. So.
We need to do a little bit shorter answers per questions to make sure we get to all of them. So you want to do the next question, Ali?
Katie is saying, how come Hizb-ut Tahrir has been banned in several Islamic countries like Egypt, Pakistan, and almost all Arab countries?
Easy answer.
Well, yeah, because their method is to stage a coup, a political coup in an Islamic country. So their method is once they're there, they get an army to agree with them, they will overturn the government. So there it's a big threat,
Yes.
the Hizb. Here, they're just trying to spread ideas and they want everyone to go back to the Muslim countries and do that. So
I mean,
that's why.
I mean, if your entire ideology is to replace the current governments with a new caliphate, global caliphate. I mean, if you're the government of these Islamic countries, I'm pretty sure you're not going to like an ideology that the entire purpose is to replace the government with something else, right? So obviously they're not going to like it. Next one.
Jim King is saying, was the attraction to Hizb more from the attraction to the guy and it came alone, or because you were into the black and white thinking and liked feeling that this is the real truth?
It was both. I mean, he was very, like, everything about it, like, was very compelling. The fact, like, again, like, it was just more, I don't know, the charisma of it. Like, they're very charismatic and they're taught to be charismatic. So, yeah.
And Jim's also saying, what would your reaction be? No, what would have her reaction while she was all in? What would your reaction have been if you had come across an Armin type who says it's all BS versus a softer reformer type? So, you've got the choice between Armin, who's like firebrand. He's like, nope, leave it all, dump it all, deterred in a swimming pool, you still wouldn't jump in, that kind of thing. And then versus that, you've got a reformer type who's giving you sort of Islam light.
So as a Muslim coming across Armin?
If you as a Muslim, as a Hizb-ut Tahrir Muslim, when you were all in, what would you? Let's see. I come to you my reaction to me compared to your reaction to somebody who wants to change Islam, but it's still like not anti-Islam, but want to reform Islam. That's what I think.
Yeah, interesting. I would see both as bad, like not like it is very black and white. So even like the teaching, like what Majid's doing, was almost worse because you're trying to change the religion, and that's like
worse.
It's worse, yeah. So yeah.
How does that play with the Hizb? I mean, you said that your husband was at least ex-husband was at least curious about it, but Majid Nawaz, when he came out, I mean, he's been there. His rhetoric about reforming and all that. How do you think that plays with it? Is there any advantage to that for people in Hizb-ut Tahrir? Would they find that message compelling at all?
What Majid's doing?
Yeah.
I do want to get back to highlighting, because Ali never lets me highlight something I want to highlight. But go on. But answer Ali before we get back to that.
He has probably influenced more Hizb to him, but I'm not sure. Like, again, like, it depends if they were like my ex, like, he right away sees like how bad it is and he's corrupted and all that.
Yeah.
All right. Can I get back to how worst thing is? So to the people who say that Armin baby steps, okay? This is like every time. I don't know why is it that every time we get like an answer, it's always like proves me right, because I don't even claim to be like, I don't even claim that this is what I'm saying works 100% of the time, right? I'm just claiming that it works more often. But every time we get an answer from our guests, it just seems to be like proving me right, okay? So for the people that say, Armin, we have to ease it in. Like, what you're doing is too aggressive, okay? What you're doing is too aggressive. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, the reform thing is not seen as a baby step that people could be more accepting of. Compared to what I'm doing, the reform thing is even more aggressively against these fundamentalists. They hate them even more. It's not a baby step. So this easing into them, this is like a less hostile. It's not this is like more problematic to them, to a lot of them than what I'm telling them. Okay. So this whole, don't let people argue that this reform thing might work better because it's easing people into something that they will find more acceptable.
However, this process that Majid is doing, I think, is necessary to show that it's not possible. I think it has to be tried. Because honestly, because when you see that you can't change it, you have to, I think you have to try.
I love it.
I think you have to show.
I love it. I love it. So the only reason why we should try reforming Islam is to show how miserably it fails. Just to show
because it will fail.
How big of a failure
it is. I don't think it's possible.
I will sign off to that. The only reason why we should try to reform Islam is to show how big of a failure reforming Islam could be. That's great. I love that.
Deborah, you've made Armin very happy today. It's quite an epiphany. So, did Deborah ever go through a reformist phase like Majid, where she was considered a deviant by her community, but was still a practicing Muslim?
No, that was right after I left and took hijab off. That would have been me, the deviant. Yeah, I was being called corrupt and deviant. Yeah.
But were you still there belief-wise at that point?
Yeah, I had kind of given myself a pass to just not think about it for a bit because I was just going through so much other stuff. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Okay. And then John is saying, how was Deborah brought into Islam after becoming atheist? Yeah. Well, so what happened there?
Yeah, so I wasn't a full atheist. I had just left Christianity because that was the only religion I knew, actually. So I was very still open to spirituality, and I had made the conscious effort to study other religions. I wanted to study Hinduism and Buddhism and all those things too. I had just come across a Muslim first, and that's the one I ended up, diving headfirst into at that time.
Yeah, so I think we have about 5 minutes left, but this is fascinating. Jim is asking, so similar question, but from your husband's point of view, ex-husband's point of view, does Deborah's husband or ex-husband feel more ill will toward a Majid type, who he would say practices a deviant form of Islam? Yeah, you already answered, or Armin, so it's clearly the Majid type.
Yeah, I actually think so, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a question by John that is in 3. Guys, put your questions into 1 so I could highlight them. But this is I don't even know what the question is. John is saying nominal Muslim versus devout Muslims. So no nominal or cultural Muslims rejected literal or political Islam in your experience, Deborah. I don't know what the question is.
I don't know what this is either. So this is,
okay. So maybe John, if you can ask it in a different way. Yeah.
Okay. So Bobo is asking, how do you recommend speaking to an Islamist and challenging their ideas? Any tips you have to change their mind?
Wow. I don't even know. I haven't tried yet.
What is it when you were sort of deeply mired in this, and supposing you had some issues with it, you were feeling trapped, your kids, and you're I don't like the way this is going. What do you think someone may have been able to say to you that would have made you think, okay, you know what, it's okay for me to get out of this? Or the people that in the atheist community, the ex-Muslim community, you can even take sort of names.
Doing what I'm doing right now, exposing myself that I got out and I'm doing, because getting out and the prospect of trying to leave my situation, it was years of me fighting that, and because I knew how it would be this hell that I'm going through. I knew it would be that hard because I was so entrenched in it. So I think it's just a matter of being as vocal and apparent to other people. If I had seen more people that were that entrenched in it get out and just do it anyways and have a community. I didn't know about ex-Muslims. I think it would have been easier if I had seen that. I think it's I think this kind of stuff is very important, and even in my community, I try to make sure that all the wrong people even see these videos. I want them to even I get some hate messages saying, oh, you talked about me or whatever. And I'll be I don't care, because I hope that gives you that seed in you that when you want to get out, that you'll get out. like to, or that you know you can.
So people like your husband actually tend to they do watch this, and they're really engaging right now. A lot of the fundamentalists are engaging a lot with ex-Muslims, like really big time, because
it shows that we're a threat. That's what it shows.
That's good.
Yeah, or just that it's an option, because
it's an option.
Yeah. You're very segregated. Like, it's such a cult.
Okay, so there's a question. I think this one is from Ifo. I'm going to answer it in half a minute. Alex is saying you can have some doing it aggressively and some doing it in stages. No. Yes, Alex, but you could do it aggressively in stages, but with the right methodology. Okay, so the reform is not stages. It's not aggressive. It's the reform thing is both aggressively in stages the wrong way, or the going at the anti-Islam way. You could do the anti-Islamic way in stages or aggressively. So it's not like the reform is stages and the anti-Islam is aggressive. No, you could do the anti-Islam method, which is the right method, in stages or aggressively, and you could do the reform way, which is wrong, whether you do it in stages or aggressively. I do want to just highlight not a question anymore, because we only have 20 seconds. Just a comment by Jim King saying, I love how honest and genuine Deborah is. Still so sweet after going through such a rough thing.
Absolutely agree. And Deborah, thank you for joining us. This was fantastic, and hope to talk to you more and stay in touch. Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. Bye, everyone. Love you guys in the live chat. Love you, Deborah. Thank you.
Love you.
The Secular Jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadists.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.